All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. So today's guest is one of 3 doctors that I've had the pleasure of interviewing live on my channel that actually are local. He is actually a legend in the desert. His name is Dr. Joseph Scherger. He's one of the few doctors that actually has an interest in nutrition in his practice. Please welcome Dr. Joseph Scherger to the show. It's so nice to see you.
Well, thank you, AJ. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to talk to your group. Some of you may notice we've launched a new TV show called Living Better that is on 3 of the local channels this week, or actually it's going to be for the next 16 weeks. And so that show, which is all going to cover healthy nutrition and healthy lifestyle, I think people will find interesting. And I'm sitting here in my new offices at Restore Health Disease Reversal in Indian Wells, where I spend a day doing deep dive consultations with people to make them be healthier. So I'm delighted to be here. The topic of Parkinson's disease and neurodegeneration has already come up today with my appointments, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Fantastic. You know, Dr. Scherger, when I moved to the desert 2.5 years ago, it didn't seem like many of the doctors even had an interest in nutrition. That's how I found you, because you do. So why do you think that doctors in general aren't as interested in nutrition as you are in general and specifically in the desert?
Well, unfortunately, medical education in the medical system in the United States is all about drugs and procedures. I mean, we're also taught that chronic diseases are lifelong conditions that people basically acquire. So I acquired high blood pressure. I acquired high cholesterol. I acquired an autoimmune disease. I acquired diabetes. And we've now learned with science that these diseases, almost all of them, are due to unhealthy nutrition and unhealthy lifestyle. And there's a new field emerging that I've gotten myself educated in called functional medicine, which is about going to the lifestyle source of the problem. And if you fix that, the diseases go away. So that's why I can call my new business disease reversal and restoring health. And 80% of the equation of a healthy lifestyle is our nutrition. You know, as Descartes said, we are what we eat. And that's more true than ever before. So all health begins in the gut and begins with our good nutrition.
Absolutely. Wouldn't it be nice that instead of having to restore health, we could find a way that doctors could just prevent people from getting these diseases of, as you say, the knife and fork in the first place?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. And fortunately, there's even some family physicians and pediatricians who are focusing on children. We've got a project in Indio High School with their health academy that's doing amazing things to keep those children healthy, because, you know, the problems begin quite young.
Yeah, absolutely. So what miracles have you seen through proper nutrition?
Oh my gosh. I mean, people lose all their excess body fat, their blood sugars come down, their inflammatory markers come down. You know, it's just amazing. And I've walked this talk. I was more than 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And I was eating muffins and chocolate chip cookies and things like that every day. I was having inflammatory foods because I grew up in a small town in Ohio, Northwest Ohio, where it was agricultural, and we just learned to eat, you know, all of these foods that we've now learned raise your blood sugar and make you unhealthy.
Right. Well, that's where we really are in such agreement that with processed food, you know, 11 years ago, I wrote a book called Unprocessed, and I made the case that whether someone eats animal products or not, nobody should be eating processed food. That's what Jack LaLanne said 80 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one line that if it was made in a plant, don't eat it. But if it came from a plant, eat it. It's just kind of a simple rule of life, if you will.
Absolutely. And you know, you not only have you lost 30 pounds, but you know, if it's okay to say that you're in your 70s and you've run like a gazillion marathons.
Yeah, it's I'm as healthy now as I have been in my 40s and 50s. So I'm very grateful for that and plan to keep it going.
Nice. And you've written several books. And one of them I've read actually. Actually, I listened to it on Audible. It's so much easier to listen, isn't it, than to read these days?
I couldn't agree more. I listen to a book every week and it's wonderful.
Right. When patients come to you, what is their most common complaint? Or is there one?
Well, the most common complaint is being overweight. I mean, we live in an overweight world. 70% or more of our public are overweight. And so we often have to begin there, but they also have chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia kind of pains, joints hurt. They're starting to worry about their memory function because I basically out here become largely a geriatrician. I mean, I delivered babies for 18 years and I love to care for children and do have some young families, but I laugh when I have medical students with me, which I do most of the time from USC, and they see my schedule and it's everyone's in their 70s, 80s, or 90s.
Yeah, well, that's because that's where I've been here 2.5 years. I don't think I've seen anybody under 70.
Oh, I know. I moved here at 58 and thought I was a kid. Everything is reset 20 years out here in the desert.
Right. Do you think though sometimes it gets harder for people to make these lifestyle changes as they get older? Because they're like, well, I want to enjoy what life I have left.
Well, I love a quote that a patient gave me that said, nothing tastes better than the feeling of being thin. And so that when you get people on a healthy path, it's self-reinforcing. But we live in a culture, unfortunately, we live in a toxic food environment. And the business of America is business. And we're dealing with a food industry and a pharmaceutical industry that think about profits ahead of health. And we're countering that. So I feel like I'm saving starfish on the beach, even though there's 1,000 of them out there.
That's so funny that the guest yesterday gave that same parable. He was talking about the same thing, just one Zoom at a time. Yeah. It's just interesting. So people think of Parkinson's disease as a disease that has nothing to do with nutrition, at least the people that I've talked to, that it's just kind of the luck of the draw. And so maybe you can explain what it is and who gets it and what can be done to even maybe prevent it in the first place.
Well, for sure. There's actually a race going on. It's a negative race, but the rate of increase of Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease are neck and neck. They're both going up at a very, very rapid rate. And that is, of course, highly alarming. And they are both neurodegenerative diseases. So they're about our brain degenerating in various parts of the brain. The hallmark of Parkinson's disease are the tremors and the very slow movements that come, where Alzheimer's disease is mostly about memory. Interestingly enough, the New York Times today was citing data on some of the health benefits of coffee, and one of them was reduced Parkinson's disease. There are studies, that coffee, not in excess, of course, but coffee or tea actually have positive effects on the brain. But a lot of good, healthy foods are really beneficial to the brain. But understanding what is toxic to the brain is the most important. And the number one is a high blood sugar. A chronically high blood sugar accelerates brain atrophy in all parts of the brain. And the other is a high levels of chronic inflammation, which can come from inflammatory foods, which are your processed foods that you write so well about. And the thing that's unique to Parkinson's disease is the correlation with pesticides and herbicides. There are 5 neurologists who have written a book recently called Ending Parkinson's Disease, where they cite the scientific data from all over the world that herbicides and pesticides on our manufactured crop products. Now, farmers in America have 3 to 4 times the rate of Parkinson's disease as other Americans of the same age. So this epidemic is really hitting in farmers. And the problem is because of the 20-year lag time from when they're on the tractor to when they're in their house developing Parkinson's disease, they don't put the two and two together. But the data is clearly there, and there's a lot of movement now to reduce the toxicity of the various things. But boy, when I read this book, it just reinforced my interest in organic and locally grown foods that are not contaminated with these herbicides and pesticides.
I had no idea that there was a connection. I'll have to check that book out because it's, I've interviewed doctors who are also regenerative farmers on this show, and they're completely against the use of these chemicals. But it's hard for people sometimes, depending on where they live or how much money they have, to buy completely organic, regenerative, all that kind of, it's horrible what they've done to our food system.
Well, it is. The last patient I just met with, she was talking about the cost of eating organic and the real healthy foods. And I go, well, if you're eating less, because we eat way too much, if you give up the sugar and the processed carbs in your diet, your total calorie intake every day goes way down. And I put a lot of people on 2 meals a day, especially seniors. We're not supposed to, fasting and burning ketones is very important to the health. The brain loves ketones. The brain really loves fasting. Very interesting study done in New Zealand that I just reviewed for a journal took people, now this isn't Parkinson's disease, but you could do the study with Parkinson's disease. They took Alzheimer's patients and put them on a very ketogenic diet for 2 weeks in which they were very low carb. They had fasting time, and their cognitive scores went up compared to a control group in just 2 weeks. We've treated seizure disorders with ketones. When you're burning fat as energy, you release ketone bodies. So it isn't about some fad diet called keto diet. It's about enough fasting time to become a fat burner. And when you are burning fats, your brain gets more clear and it heals.
Well, there actually people can do the ketogenic diet. There is a vegan version of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When you're the healthy, like avocados and nuts and seeds, the big shift for the plant-based community, which I respect enormously and read actively. Dean Ornish is one of my heroes. He was the guy who got me really into a lot of the new nutrition. But one shift that the plant-based community has made, and I think Joel Furman, who you've interviewed, realizes this, is that we shouldn't worry about healthy fats. Dean Ornish was against all oils. He said all oils are 100% fat, but it's kind of been moderated now that olive oil is actually a pretty healthy thing, and that good raw nuts and seeds are quite healthy to balance off the kale that you love so much.
I'm just more concerned because my specialty is with food addiction and weight loss, the caloric density of oil. I'd rather have people eat the whole food, the whole olive, the whole nut, the whole seed, the whole avocado, because I
understood.
Yeah. Yep. So
Rita,
who's watching live, says, could you please say the name of the book again?
Well, the book is called The Ending Parkinson's Disease, the book that covers all of the pesticides and herbicides.
Yeah. I don't understand why these are even allowed and legal, I mean, they always wait. Our country seems to wait until things are horrible and then tries to fix them rather than just not do these things that other countries do that make so much sense with the food supply.
Well, it's an interesting story. One American hero was a guy named Norman Borlaug. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. He was credited for saving 1 billion lives by creating modern wheat and the plants and things that resisted the fungus and the stuff that was destroying products, helped Mexico recover from starvation. But we just took it all way too far, and we created an agribusiness that is just based on seeds and on products that maximize profit and longevity on the shelf and all of these other things over looking seriously at the health.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if it lasts on the shelf, you probably shouldn't be eating it in the first place.
That's right. Not very alive anymore, is it?
Absolutely, because I like the best food, in my opinion, is one that has no labels. I don't know if you read Dr. Robert Lustig's new book, Metabolical, I believe it's called. Yeah. I'm hoping to have him on the show soon, and it's basically what he says. It's not even so much the food; it's what's been done to the food that's the problem.
You're exactly right. Yeah, I've read his the Fat Chance and the Hacking of the American Mind, and you know he's really on a mission to get rid of high fructose corn syrup. You know, what we've really poisoned ourselves, because it's not a natural product, but the corn refiners love it because it's just another profit area out of corn, is to turn it into liquid sweet a product that replaces sugar. And so not only are sodas bad for you for the sugar, but the high fructose corn syrup gives you early fatty liver, which is the most common cause of liver disease right now.
Yeah, that's just unbelievable. That, you know, I'm on a mission that I've been for years. I've been without processed food for, it's almost 20 years now. And I'm often not accepted by my own people, meaning the vegan community, because they hire me to speak at these veg fests, which are basically crap fests. And I'm speaking against it while all the vendors are selling their crap. And it's like, I feel like I don't fit in either world, you know, because I'm vegan, I can't fit in the healthy world with the non-vegans. And because I'm against the processed food, because people, they don't realize how deleterious it is, because it takes years often for these diseases to show up. These diseases.
Well, that's right.
Of
that's
nutritional
right.
folly, as you might say. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's tough out there. You know, you mentioned about how, you know, 2 meals a day, you often say to your patients, you know, this concept of just even intermittent fasting. I find, especially as I get older, I'm in my 60s, I don't need 3 meals a day. I find the older I get, the less food I seem to need. I mean, as long as I'm eating the healthy food, then I'm not driven to overeat. But I think people often just overeat because.
Well, you're right. It's a habit. It's you know, and if their blood sugar is bouncing around, they get hungry way too often. You know, I eat a natural product food. It's my breakfast is all plant-based, but I'm never hungry the rest of the day because of the nuts and seeds that are in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a question from a live viewer. If we had to choose between locally grown produce from the farmer's market or organically grown produce from the grocery store, what's the best option? And I learned that even organics, they can use pesticides too.
Well, you're right. I would say learn about the company. You know, when I go to shop at the market, you know, I don't just assume that all these companies are the same. And I think you can do a little background check on the company and how ethical they are. The beauty of a farmer's market is you can interview the farmer and find out what the farmer did. Now, you may find out that the farmer did use pesticides and herbicides that you're concerned about. So I don't think you can answer that question just on simple face value. It takes a little bit of digging.
Yeah, well, you know, if we can just grow your own. One thing I've been doing is sprouting, and that's really been fun. And it's cheap. It's so much cheaper.
Yeah, it's food. The healthiest people on earth who eat a heavily plant-based diet are low-income people, the blue zone populations. You know, except for Loma Linda, they're all in very low-income areas of Sardinia and Ikaria and Costa Rica and these places.
Absolutely. Do you sprout?
I don't.
Oh,
I don't. I could and probably should, but
maybe I'll get you actually every guest on the show gets a gift of 2 free bottles of my favorite vinegar, but maybe for you, I should get you a sprouting kit. It's actually quite easy. It's much easier than medical school. I can promise you that.
Well, I'm sure it'll be fine, but it's got to pass muster with my wife because she owns the kitchen and what we eat. So, but nice. I'm sure she'll like it.
Nice. So Karen says diabetics' glucose readings can increase with too much fat, even when they're from healthy whole food sources. Would welcome the doctor's thoughts.
Well, your fat, you can store fat, as every overweight person knows. Now, obviously, fat is so filling, it's so dense, it's calorie dense, as you often say in your density, that it's hard to overeat it. You'd almost have to force yourself. But I would look at Sarah Hallberg, Hallberg, her TED Talk, the on how to reverse diabetes. So the Sarah Hallberg, she's a Indianapolis, Indiana internist. It's TED Talk. You can Google that. You can also read Jason Fung, the diabetes code. He runs a clinic in Toronto that reverses diabetes, but it's all about the carbohydrate insulin axis. I mean, David Ludwig at Harvard showed that quite clearly. So diabetes is a disease of carbohydrate toxicity. And fat is only a problem when you eat it with carbs. That's, so if you're eating a Krispy Kreme donut with all that fat, or you're having French fries, that'll make you fat and that'll raise your blood sugar. But it's really the interaction between these unhealthy fats and the carbohydrates that are in there.
Right. That's why for some people like Dr. Robbie Barbero and Dr. Cyrus Kambata, I don't know if you're familiar with Mastering Diabetes. If not, I'll get you their book. They are both diabetic and eat a low-fat diet. But like you say, it's the fat and the carb that is the dangerous combination. Yeah. And when you think about it, I don't know if because I know you're really well read and I love your blog because you actually review books like Dr. Greger's How Not to Die. I don't know if you saw him when he was here in the desert right before the pandemic. He spoke.
I missed it, but
it was great.
On video many times.
The Rancho Mirage Library, all 300 seats were taken immediately, and then they had to create like an overflow room with several hundred more. So it was quite nice. So what was my point? I was going to say something else, and books. So The Pleasure Trap, one of my very favorite books, we talk about how sugar, fat, and salt are addictive, and especially when they're together. And in nature, they're not combined. No. And so, like you say, this combination of carbohydrate with fat, which is kind of basically what processed food is. There was a surge of processed food that was low fat in the 80s, but most processed food, donuts, croissant, chips, it's this deadly combination of high fat with high sugar and salt.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember many years ago when I was enjoying a croissant at a medical meeting, and the wife of one of the doctors who knew a lot more than I did at the time, she looked at me and said, do you know how many pads of butter are in that croissant? There's 9 pads of butter. I looked at the croissant, and I've never looked at a croissant the same way since.
It's incredible. I don't know how the French do it. I remember it was many years ago. I was attending, I'm not a doctor, but I got to go to this medical conference because Dr. Esselstyn from Prevent Reverse Heart Disease was speaking to doctors for CEUs. And it was a breakfast meeting. And that's exactly what they had, was croissants and coffee. And I remember Dr. Esselstyn said, how many of you had kale for breakfast? And I was the only one that raised my hand. And he said, well, I'd like to meet you, young lady. And that was the first time I met him. But that's funny that, I don't know if you still are on staff at Eisenhower seeing patients in the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And I've never actually been to Eisenhower. I've been to Desert Regional where I have volunteered, at least until the pandemic. But have you noticed that the food that they serve in hospital cafeterias to patients is not really all that healthy?
Yeah. And almost all of the nurses and staff are overweight or obese. We've asked about that, but again, it gets down to money. To feed 3,300 employees and 300 patients in the hospital and do all that has a food budget, and the food services that are marketed to institutions like hospitals are unfortunately not healthy at all.
Absolutely. So Elise says, please ask the doctor to share his thoughts on how to prevent tremors, not Parkinson's tremor, that run in family. What can help head tremors or other tremors?
Well, all tremors are a sign of neurodegeneration. So while the Parkinson tremor is a resting tremor, the tremor that, for example, is more common, called essential tremor, that happens, you can see someone trying to get the golf ball out of the hole and their hand starts shaking. That is also a sign of neurodegeneration. It's a warning sign. So part of your brain has shown some degeneration. And nutritionist, neurologist David Perlmutter has written about that so eloquently in his book, Brain Maker and Grain Brain, that is in a second edition now. So I think avoiding neurodegeneration by avoiding processed foods, inflammatory foods, and a lot of sugar is exactly what you need to do. You're not going to get tremors if you eat a lot of broccoli all the time. So broccoli and walnuts, for example, kind of have fallen out of the literature as the two healthiest foods for the brain. So I have broccoli and walnuts every day, for example, for reasons. But of course, kale and other of the green, leafy and cruciferous vegetables are also as good.
Yeah, broccoli is my favorite. I do eat that almost every day. I probably should diversify a little bit more. Do you find that it's more people are older when they first get diagnosed with Parkinson's? Because I think about Michael J. Fox, he was quite young.
Yeah. I mean, it is a disease that we don't really see in children, but Michael J. Fox was an example of a young person. He must have had some toxic exposures because I think everyone believes that it's not just an accident of nature and it's not an autoimmune disease, but it's due to toxic exposures. We also have learned that essentially all autoimmune disease comes from toxic exposures also. Sometimes a chronic infection like Lyme can do it, but otherwise it would come from toxic foods.
Yeah. Once somebody has it, is there hope, or is it kind of like once they have it, they're still going to have some symptoms from it? Can it be completely reversed? Like we have seen heart disease and diabetes where people no longer seem to have the disease.
Well, it's great. It's a great question. Metabolic diseases like diabetes are incredibly reversible. Many autoimmune diseases are reversible. Now, neurodegenerative diseases are really far down the chain of damage. But when Dale Bredesen began to show, and the couple up at Loma Linda also began to show that you could actually improve cognitive decline by purifying your diet and your lifestyle and all the important elements of that. You can actually reverse cognitive decline. And Bredesen has even shown that you can regrow the hippocampus, which is the memory center of the brain. So that's very compelling work. Now, no one's ever showed reversal of Parkinson or essential tremor yet. Certainly stabilizing those conditions. I see this all the time. Preserve what you got. Don't let it go further. And I think if you purify a person's diet and make their lifestyle very healthy, they can live many, many more quality years than they would have otherwise.
You mentioned the couple at Loma Linda. I think you might mean the Scherzais.
Yeah,
right. And actually, I actually, believe it or not, had a head injury right before the pandemics. And she is my neurologist, and I like them very much. And one of the things they talk about, at least because their specialty is Alzheimer's, is that exercise is really, really important for prevention of Alzheimer's. And I know you are marathon runner.
Yeah. So exercise comes right after nutrition, and it's very, very important. We're designed to move. We need to get that heart rate up. It improves circulation to the brain. It helps open blood vessels, helps to enlarge your blood vessels. So yes, exercise is really important.
And they mentioned especially the leg muscles, those big muscles, especially in Alzheimer's prevention. Because I do run, I spin, and my legs are disproportionately larger compared to the rest of my body from all those years of spinning.
Good. That's great.
Do you still run every day? Are you training for any marathons?
No. I retired from marathons. I was actually used to be pretty good when I was 29 or 30, but now I'm slowed down and I just don't enjoy the long distance anymore. There's also data that long distance sports may not be as healthy for you. There's what's called the J-shaped curve where it starts to become a problem after some time. So I reduced, and I'm more of a 5K runner nowadays than I am a marathon runner, but I still enjoy it. I feel great from it. I'm also getting into hiking, hiking uphill, some good. And I have my Apple Watch and I try to close my exercise rings every day, but hiking is a wonderful form of exercise also.
Right. I don't know if you've been just a couple blocks from my house. There is the Badlands Trail. I don't know if you ever hiked there. It's wonderful.
Not that one. Good for you.
So do you still run? Because I'm wondering, like, it was 108 yesterday where we live. How do people even run in the desert?
No, I used to have a 90-degree rule when I moved out here. Now it's an 80-degree rule. If the temperature is 80 or higher, I don't run.
Yeah, that makes sense. So here's a question actually about broccoli. Where did it go? I just saw it. Somebody was asking, I think it was June, is frozen broccoli okay? Does it have to be fresh?
No, frozen foods don't lose nutritional value like boiling a food would do, or overcooking might do. So fortunately, we can freeze foods if you can't get them fresh, whether it be berries, fruit, and vegetables too. So frozen foods, now again, buy them from a quality producer. Usually if you see it and it's in a transparent bag, it's probably better than if it's in a box that you can't see through and came from far away. But frozen is okay.
That's great. And Rita says, is ringing in the ears and tinnitus, is that neurological?
Yes. It is the hearing cells, the eighth nerve of the cranial nerves. And I kind of call it static on the radio. We're given these hearing cells, and they live with us our whole life. And eventually they can develop noise. And I say, if you found a radio that was 75 years old and you turned it on, you'd probably expect some static. Well, that can happen to your hearing cells, but it comes from exposure. It comes from loud noises. It is a degenerative reaction of the nerve, the hearing cells, and it's not easily treated.
Well, believe it or not, I recently had a doctor on the show a couple of weeks ago that said through therapeutic water fasting, he's seen it go away. Isn't that weird?
Therapeutic water. What is water?
Water fasting is something I got to introduce you to some of my people, Dr. Scherger, like Dr. Alan Goldhammer. I used to work there at the True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, and he's got tons of research on reversing even lymphoma through the use of water only fasting. It's medically supervised by medical doctors. It's not like it's not. And he said he's had patients that came for that, and it's been gone.
Well, that's, I'm a total fan of fasting time. I mean, I've got, one way to jumpstart the reversal of diabetes is to go on a 3-day or longer fast. And these are water fasts because you got to remind people to stay hydrated, especially out here in the desert. So doing a water fast is a very healthy thing to do. But I've not heard about it reversing tinnitus. That'd be great.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And he said he's been having a lot of success with people with COVID long haulers with water fasting, with that part of the disease. So anyway, it's interesting. So whatever works for people. I've never done water fasting.
Well, you're bringing up a very important area, and that's the immune system. The COVID long haulers is all can be tied to a disorder of our immune system, and all the stuff we're talking about with processed foods and the problems of toxic foods is its impact on our immune system. And there's a wonderful book out called The Immunity Fix on how to fix your immune system by a couple young scientists. But it's all related to healthy nutrition and lifestyle.
Nice. Well, I'm writing down all your book recommendations. So I remember when I saw you in the office, you had all those books of many of the people that are actually my friends.
They're all right behind me here. If I raise up my video, I've got a loaded library here in my Restore Health office.
Nice. I remember when I interviewed Dr. David Katz, I mean, it was just like, it was all books. You could barely see the doctor. Right. So let's see. Elise says a lot of Americans are low in their vitamin E intake. Does the doctor feel that being low in vitamin E in their brain, they're more prone to fat oxidation?
Well, vitamin E is an interesting vitamin. It is going up and down on how important it is and whether or not we should have it with supplement. Vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it's not as easy one to get. There's a lot of controversy about how much that we need. I do think it's an important vitamin along with probably the most important of fat-soluble vitamins, and that's vitamin D. It's very interesting right now because if you take vitamin E supplements, you can have an increase in blood clots, which of course, can lead to heart attack or stroke. So you got to be careful with vitamin D, get a mixed group of tocopherols. And of course, like all vitamins, it's best gotten in diet.
You've been practicing in the desert for some time now, and the sun here is different than the sun in LA. It's like it's a whole different ballgame. And so,
Yeah.
how do people manage the need for getting out in the sunshine and not getting skin damage and skin cancer? It's a tough one.
Well, 15, 20 minutes and then go back in. I mean, it's got to be short, and you need to keep your skin moisturized. You don't have to use a sunscreen that blocks all of the sun, but you just don't go out there, wear a hat, wear clothing, protect your skin, or otherwise, the people who are out here develop what we call lizard skin. Their skin just gets really thick and scaly and dry, and it kills the skin. They don't sweat anymore. It's dangerous.
I hope that's not going to be me, because I don't find it as oppressively hot as other people. Is that a genetic thing, or is it because I'm not overweight? Because so many people complain about the heat here, and my husband and I keep waiting. What are they talking about? It's okay.
Yeah, you don't wear a fat derived fur coat. A lot of people who are overweight and obese, I mean, they're literally wearing a full fur coat out there of insulation. They get incredibly hot. Where you're so lean that the heat feels good. You're the kind of person who probably wears a sweater inside an air-conditioned office or something.
That's right. I go to Costco and I'm like, I need a winter coat.
Yeah.
So funny. Susan is asking, is there any relation between Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis?
There's a great question. They're very, very different diseases. I mean, multiple sclerosis is not in the brain itself. It's in what's called the myelin sheaths that coat our peripheral nerves. So it's an autoimmune disease that destroys the coating. Think of electric wires that would have a rubber coating, and all of a sudden those get eroded away. So that's the problem with multiple sclerosis, where Parkinson's disease is in the brain. So very, very different problems.
Are they trying to develop new medicines for Parkinson's disease? Because, people, at least that I know, want a pill for every ill. They don't want to change their diet. They just want the results of what changing the diet would do. So are there new medications on the frontier for people with Parkinson's?
Well, there have been. And of course, pharma wants, like the new Alzheimer's drug, which I think is obscene, quite honestly. And, neurodegeneration is not solved by pills. Dale Bredesen spent 24 years trying to find magic bullets, and his wife, who's an integrative medicine person you would love, convinced him that he needed to fix the diet and the lifestyle, and he proved that she was right. But no, I mean, what's interesting in Parkinson's disease is that L-DOPA, the dopamine, by giving dopamine, people are amazingly better. It's like the movie Awakenings that Oliver Sacks was the neurologist for in an illness. I mean, and that's what Sinemet, L-DOPA, carbidopa combination. There's no better pill than that. They keep trying to come up with new and additional movement disorder pills, but they're clearly still the mainstay.
You ever heard that saying, when diet is right, medicine is of no use? When diet is wrong, medicine is no help, something like that.
Maimonides.
Yeah.
And Maimonides, I mean, and that's in there. And actually Hippocrates has a quote very similar to that also.
Yeah, absolutely. Elise says, do you do meditation or yoga or something like that? And how important is it?
I was lucky. Way back in Ohio in the early 1970s, I was initiated by the Maharishi Mahesh Yoga into Transcendental Meditation. So I've had my mantra, and I do meditation to calm the mind. I do it, it's not like on a ritual schedule, but I meditate often. I do a lot of therapeutic stretching, and yoga is a type of therapeutic stretching. I'm a huge fan of yoga. I find that my own sort of stiffness and stuff doesn't allow me to do a lot of yoga. I don't enjoy it as much as I do in the kind of stretching I do before and after running. But I really recommend, whether it be yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, everyone should have a therapeutic stretching and balance exercises that it gives you.
Yeah, especially as we get older. So many people, they get older, they can't even get up off of the toilet anymore. My brother-in-law, who's a firefighter, says they get a lot of calls just to get people up off the toilet.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Call 911 because you can't get off the toilet. It's a sad.
And you know, it's so funny, Dr. Scherger. This was the first house we ever bought. And so we didn't know much about all the little extras, backsplashes. And for some reason I don't know if it's in the desert because we're in a 55 and older community, the toilet seats are like higher than they were at home
Yep.
because I guess they just assume that we're not going to be able to get up.
Yeah, if your knees are bent too much, it's harder. But part of the healthy lifestyle is to have a strong upper body, a strong core, and strong legs. You mentioned legs earlier, but people tend to neglect the core. And one of the best exercises a senior can do every day is to, not using the arms of anything, to put your hands on your thighs and get up, sit down, get up, sit down, and to do that 10 times. As a matter of fact, it's a quick fitness test, but you use all those core gluteal muscles. It's all about getting up without any extra support. And if you do 10 of those every day, maybe even more than one session a day, you'll always be able to get off the toilet.
That's good. I'm actually doing them now, you know.
Isn't it great? It's a great exercise.
Yeah, I can feel it. What do you think about that new drug that was just approved for obesity? Are you familiar? It just was the last couple of weeks.
No, I know. It's a big pharma thing. It's a money maker. It messes with your brain. To me, to find a pill to treat a bad diet. If it was a pill that made you not want processed foods or excess sugar and carbs, that'd be great. But it's not that kind of a pill. So I used to prescribe medicines for obesity, and I don't anymore. It's you don't need them. And again, as Maimonides said, any disease that can be treated by diet should not be treated any other way.
Right. Well, the medicine I prescribe for obesity is called vegetables.
You're exactly right.
Susan says, you said that MS is not in the brain, but I have nearly 300 lesions on my brain, none active. Can you comment?
Well, it's again, that's it. In the advanced parts of multiple sclerosis, by MRI, you can find lesions that are in the brain, but the primary disease is on the myelin sheaths. But again, it's an autoimmune disease. I know a woman who recommends with one of her diets is 9 cups of vegetables a day is Terry Walls, and she reversed her multiple sclerosis. It's called the Walls Protocol, WAHLS, Terry Walls, but I would highly recommend that. AJ, I unfortunately am going to have to get off.
Right. It's just that you're not being seen anymore. So we'll say goodbye to you. Maybe tell us quickly how we can see your television show.
Well, it's called Living Better. So do a little search. It's on locally. It's on channel 2, 3, and 11 at different times, and it's on every week. So look for the TV show Living Better.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Scherger.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Nice
and thanks all of you. Oh, my pleasure.
Have me back. I'm locally, and I'm
love
expensive, so have me back.
I would love to, Dr. Scherger. Thank you. Bye-bye. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. I do have a bonus show today at 2 p.m. with our favorite resident psychologist, Dr. Doug Lyle, and Dr. Jen Hawk. We'll be answering questions of people that have submitted them first. And then if there's time, people that are watching live. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.